Rich, it's so great to see you. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
Yeah, our pleasure. So you've been there on the ground in East Palestine, Ohio. Just give us a sense of how residents are feeling and what you're hearing from them.
Residents are angry. They feel like the people that I've spoken to at least feel like they've been forgotten. Here we are, we're approaching 3 weeks, and they say help is finally just coming. And, walking around and talking to folks here, there's a lot of talk that like FEMA is here and people are here and but that's not, we haven't seen that. There's people handing out water and townspeople helping the other people in town. But like in terms of actual help, it's not everywhere. It's not like a normal disaster, setting like where you go in and you see all these stations and people helping. I'm outside of a church right now where they're just opening this morning a health clinic, and people are starting to file in nurses and toxicologists, and then apparently there's at least 20 people signed up to come here this morning and get themselves checked out. So it's the residents I've talked to are angry. They say they're just not getting help. Their homes are not getting tested. They are saying Norfolk Southern is handling this the wrong way, and they need help.
Well, on that note, Rich, you've been tweeting some really, I think, disturbing images. We have one that we can put up on the screen here, just tracking what people are saying, the effects this may have had on their bodies. It's very early to know exactly the extent of all of that. But can you share with us more, examples like this? What are you hearing about people's health? What examples have you encountered of how this might have affected people's health?
I went to there's a church set up where Norfolk Southern is set up to kind of try and reimburse people for hotels and assistance like that. And I went there to interview people on that. And one guy stopped me. He's like, "Listen, his eyes were bloodshot and red, and like he's like, my eyes feel like they're gonna pop out of my head." He's like, every time I sneeze, it's like bloody. I'm like, "Have you gone to the hospital?" He's like, "I haven't had time. We don't have time to do this." So I interviewed this other woman last week. She called me and she said, "Look, I just went back to my house. They'd been evacuated. Just went back to my house to move something around." And she's like, "I was there for 30 minutes, and I went to go take a shower, and that's the picture that you have." Her face and her neck was all covered in rashes. And so I went over there, and she asked me if I wanted to go into that part of the house where she feels like she was exposed. I was like, "I'm not going in there. Like, nobody's tested there. Nobody knows what's residing." And it was a low-level part of the house where she was in the direct line of the smoke the night that they kind of did the chemical release. So a lot of these houses have not been tested. Nobody really knows what is actually in them and if their houses are safe. There's just a lot of questions.
You had, I think, an important story for News Nation about how East Palestine residents were asked by Norfolk Southern to sign an indemnity form, a hold harmless form. Your lead here, you say, just weeks after a train carrying toxic chemicals derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, some residents say they're being asked to sign contracts they fear could prevent them from suing later on. So basically Norfolk Southern here trying to do a little CYA and convince residents to sign this contract that could prevent them from suing the company. What is the company's line on this, and what are residents saying about it?
So the residents say, like we spoke to, say, initially they came around, they said, "We want to test your house." And they said, "Well, who is this?" And it was like, apparently the EPA was there, but representatives like aligned with Norfolk Southern were there. And so in order to have your house tested, you had to sign this form. And one woman who was, kind of smart legally and said, "I'm not signing this form. What is this? Can I have it?" And I wouldn't give it to her. So she took a picture. She gave it to me. And basically it's a hold harmless agreement saying, if you agree to this testing, you'll hold us harmless as we enter your property and for any, like, basically future litigation. We asked Norfolk Southern about this, and they said, no, some of those were sent out by mistake. That language, indemnity language, should not have been included. Going forward, it was a mistake. And so they basically said it was a mistake. And any people who did sign this have not waived their right to future litigation.
So You just touched on something really interesting, is this was mistakenly sent out by the state, et cetera, and we know the Ohio EPA, as you mentioned earlier, and FEMA. There are people who are down there at least attempting to look like they're helping out, and maybe helping out to some extent. But when you're talking to people, Rich, you mentioned they're frustrated at Norfolk Southern. Are they also frustrated at the government? Are they frustrated at the governor? Are they frustrated at the EPA? What are people's sentiments towards their own government right now?
I think they're frustrated at everybody. They're like, one gentleman I interviewed called me this morning and asked me, like, where do I go for this health screening, and how do I get tested? There's not a really centralized kind of blast out to this community. Like, here's where you can go for your health screenings. Here's where you can go for this. Like, they're having to hunt and gather this information in a way that when you kind of cover other disasters or a tornado rips through a town, it's all centralized and people have access to this information. Here, it doesn't feel like that to me. That's my impression. And people are upset. They're upset at the governor. They're upset at the EPA. They're just like, this is totally bungled from the start. And here we are 3 weeks later, and we're kind of in the same scenario. These people are like, look, the only people that have come to my house are the mailman. So it's baffling.
And finally, Rich, early on in this crisis, one of your colleagues at News Nation was trying to do his job and ended up getting arrested during a press conference that Mike DeWine, governor, was giving at that time. Have you had any trouble or roadblocks to doing your job as a journalist while you're on the ground there?
I can't say that I have. Since that, I'll let the video speak for itself on that with Evan, my colleague. I think he handled himself well. From my experience here in town, no, there's been no hindrances. There's been nothing to say that I can't continue my job, although we are, we have our guard up because of what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rich, thank you for spending some time with us today. And most importantly, thank you so much for being there on the ground doing real reporting about exactly what is going on.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Our pleasure. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.